Welcome. Glad you all took the opportunity to join us today with the Volunteer and Combination Officer Section Lithium-Ion Batteries webinar. We're excited that you're here today. There are some things that we want to go over that, Nan, I can't get the slide. Okay, that just briefly some logistical things. If we're doing voice over IP technology through your computer, so make sure your speakers are turned on or your headset. We have muted you, so we don't have to worry about your microphone. You don't have to worry about your dog barking or any of that kind of stuff. If you're experiencing technical difficulties through the IFC support system, you can send an email to the webinars at ifc.org there. So you can keep that in mind. So as you proceed here, we will have an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of this. I will tell you that we're over 180 attendees. So we will do our best to handle the questions. If we don't get the questions live, we will get the questions answered after the webinar, and we'll get them posted so you can see that. The webinar is being recorded so that you can see, you'll be able to see this later. You'll be able to share this link with other people. And we have numerous different webinars are being scheduled that'll show up here, but you'll get a link on the recorded session so that you can get that by email, as well as with a brief survey. The V2S is very, very interested in your opinion of what we presented. Was it valuable? Was it relative? And are you able to use that? So please let us know about your experience. So let's get ready to get started here. We have an outstanding presenter here today. Chief Clyde Wilhelm is with the Swissvale Fire Department in Pennsylvania. I will not talk about how long he's been here. I will just tell you that he has been studying the battery issue for some time. He, like many of us, are learning about the lithium-ion battery issue and how to handle it. And he presented at Symposium in the Sun about a month ago. And so it's like, how do we get this word out and more of our people? So, Clyde, it's all yours.
Thank you, John. We're going to go over a lot of information in a short amount of time. So if I'm going too fast, just try to bear with me. I'll try to slow myself down. Sometimes I tend to get a little carried away, a little bit passionate about things that I talk about, and this is definitely one of them. Just to give you a quick background on me, I'm the career chief in Swissvale Fire Department, a small combination department that borders the city of Pittsburgh in southwest Pennsylvania. Started in the fire service in 1982 as a junior volunteer, and worked my way through every office available on the volunteer side, both on the administrative and line end, and took a job as a career chief here back in 2010. I was blessed to be able to do what I love and get paid for it for a living and trying to make a difference. So with that said, I did have a great opportunity that John afforded us, me and Chief Frank Lieb, Deputy Chief, Assistant Chief Lieb from FDNY, and Chief Coy from Laramie County Fire and Rescue in Cheyenne, Wyoming. We did an hour-and-a-half presentation at the Symposium in the Sun. And that was one of the things. We had about an hour and a half, and we still had stuff to talk about. So trying to put a lot of this information in a 145-minute webinar is going to be tough. I'm sure that we will have successive ones in the future so that we can build upon what I'm going to show you today. With that, I want to start with a brief 3-minute video that's going to come up. It was based on the FDNY Lithium-Ion Battery Symposium that was held a few months ago with fire officials from all across the country that visited New York, because New York is experiencing a large problem because of such a large urban area with great population in a small area. They're experiencing a lot more lithium-ion batteries than most of us. So they've kind of set themselves up to volunteer to be this the lead on this, of bringing all this information together. So with that said, I'd like to start this video.
Are we still buying that? I don't think so. There's lithium-ion batteries in just about everything now. I mean, you're looking at them in your cell phones, personal electronic devices, energy storage system, cars. The list goes on.
Now, with these mobility devices rapidly increasing and costing millions of dollars in property damage and numerous casualties, they become the latest FDNY hot topic.
And only by collaborating are we going to be able to solve this problem and better protect our residents and protect our properties.
I've not seen an event like this. This is the first time I've seen this particular kind of audience come together.
We've seen an exponential increase in these fires year to year. So going back to 2020, we had 44 fires with 0 fatalities and 23 injuries. So far this year, we've seen 138 fires with 5 fatalities and 85 injuries.
New York City, due to its dense population and crowded streets, is an ideal place for micromobility devices. The dangers to life and property are undeniable. The danger to our firefighters is obvious now, and the potential for tragedy is a priority concern for everyone in the fire service.
Training sits at the tip of the spear when we talk about what's over the horizon and what do we need to do to best protect our members.
But we're not going to fool ourselves, right? We're not stopping this. Rather, our hope is to manage our response to this effectively, whatever that is.
These aren't coming in as hazmat calls. They're coming in as fires, explosive events. This is not something that we're normally seeing, but we're seeing these because of these mobility devices.
And you need to know what you're doing when you're dealing with these batteries.
What are the next steps? Where do we go from here?
You know what I call this? I call this a rekindle. The game has changed. That's why I say, look, get that slide in your head. You want to take a look at this, so when your firefighters pull up to that, you think differently.
We look out in this room, there's 200 some folks here that have an expertise in one piece of something, and we're able to share that amongst each other.
So you're going to listen, you're going to learn, and you're going to go back and pass it on.
I have no doubt in the course of the symposium we'll all learn from each other. Some questions will be answered, many more will be raised. Let's keep our conversation going and collaborate to find solutions. This is all of our challenge here.
All right, for those of you who may not have seen that video, I hope that was a good intro to what we're dealing with and the amount of collaboration that's going on nationally to try to get information out as best as we can and as quickly as possible. So the objectives of today's webinar is to basically familiarize you with a basic overview to understand the basics of the lithium-ion batteries, lithium-ion battery fires, and the hazards associated with these fires. You know, this is going to become for us in most of America a low frequency and potentially high consequence event. The reality is, you know, I love this little meme because nothing like starting the day with an existential crisis. I always joke that, you know, we don't seem to manufacture much in the United States, but we sure are good at manufacturing existential crises. This is going to be a problem for us, but I don't think that it's at a crisis level. And I know very often us in the emergency services and the fire service tend to overreact sometimes whenever we get limited amounts of information. So in working with VCOS, we're going to try to continue this series, I think, to get information out, good information, in reasonable, timely manner so that you don't get on the wrong side of this and get overwhelmed and think that the threat may be greater than it really is. And I'm not trying to diminish this threat either, but I'm trying to be balanced and nuanced in the proper way. So when we're dealing with lithium-ion batteries and you come into contact with either a lithium-ion electric car fire or some other fire that started with it, I could give you one solid piece of advice. And this is from advice that I got many, many years ago. And those of you who are a little older will recognize this guy.
Information I can give you, ladies and gentlemen. You have time on a task, slow down, slow down, slow down.
Right? Slow down. Let's take a deep breath And then let's start to learn about these things and where they really are. Because even the news media has jumped on board. And at the end of this slide presentation, you'll see some video links and they'll be available online. There's some news stories on there where they're really bringing up the hyperbole and making this something very, very much more serious than it may actually be. So lithium-ion batteries are not new. There's some reports that this was experimented with as early as the 1912. Really, the first patent was filed in the 70s. They went into commercial production in the 80s and 90s, and they've been around for quite a while. There are billions of them out there, but we're just starting to learn about them because, as with any technology, they're trying to stretch the limits and really pack a lot more energy in these little cells. But generally, they're relatively safe and effective whenever they're used and cared for properly. So just to throw out some statistics, because I think this is relevant and gives you an idea of the seriousness of it, but also how infrequent they may actually be. You'll hear a lot about FDNY's taking the lead on this, and they've had some really unique situations because when they have these fires start, they're in high-rise buildings, high occupancy, high hazard buildings. And so they're seeing a little different angle of it. And some of these other metro departments are as well. But for most of us in middle America, we're not going to see the call volume that they do. So on this slide, just statistically, you'll see FDNY's had about 205 fires this year involving lithium-ion batteries. And they averaged 620,000 suppression calls annually in 2021. 27,000 structure fires, almost 14,000 non-structural fires. So that equals about 0.49% of their fires. It's unknown how many e-mobility devices are out there, and e-mobility devices, you'll hear that term a lot. They're like electric bikes, scooters, hoverboards, etc. But this will definitely be a growing issue for the fire service, especially in urban areas. For motor vehicle fires, here's another little perspective. There's been a lot of articles recently. This was from Car and Driver in 22, that there was actually a study done by Auto Insurance EZ about the frequency of fires and include from all causes, including collisions for automobiles in 2021. Hybrid vehicles, which also have an internal combustion engine and an electric motor, had the most fires of 3,475 per 100,000. So that's what, 3.5% roughly. Vehicles with just an internal combustion engine came in second with about 1,530 per 100,000. And fully electric vehicles, ironically, had the least, 25 per 100,000 vehicles. So they're making a lot of headway on the safety features and the battery management systems on these vehicles. And you may not realize this, but one of the dangers for lithium-ion batteries is heat. Heat is basically the nemesis of those batteries. And they have cooling systems in these cars now. When you have these battery packs installed in the floors, they're actually running glycol tubes through the battery systems, the modules, and to cool the batteries, to keep them cool. So as far as EVs, hybrids, and traditional motor vehicles, this is just to give you an impact. You know, there's about 975,000 hybrids, 285 million conventional vehicles, 460,000 fully electric cars. So I just threw these numbers in here so you can see, if you go back and look at these and you do the math later, if you want to look at these presentations, it's actually not a large amount of vehicle fires. But when these vehicle fires happen, they are pretty big. The car usually gets destroyed. If you're able to put that vehicle out, you're going to use an exorbitant amount of water. You're probably going to have to hit a hydrant if you're in a hydrant area, or use tankers. And additionally, the vehicles, we had one, I met with some engineers last week that are forensic arson investigators. I should say fire investigators. They had said that there was a vehicle that reignited 3 months after the original fire. So you just don't know what's going to happen with them. There's some crazy ideas out there. There's one manufacturer that's manufacturing a dumpster that you can put the vehicle in and completely fill it with water to submerge it. I don't know about you, but I don't have that in my budget, nor do I have an extra vehicle to have a dumpster readily available to take to a fire scene. So I think that we're going to see a huge increase in these type of incidents. I just pulled this off just to show you what the annual growth rate's going to be as far as lithium-ion batteries. And it's basically 350%. there's going to be a 350% increase between 2021 and 2030 in lithium-ion batteries that we're going to be dealing with out in our homes, our businesses, and on the road. So as you can see, it's going to continue to grow. As you heard on that video, we're going to more and more of this type of activity. So what I'd like to do now is try to give you a real brief but crash course on lithium-ion batteries. I'm a little bit of an electronics nerd, so I kind of like to know how things operate. And I'm sure some of you out there watching this today would like to have a basic understanding of it as well. So there's basically 4 types of lithium-ion cells that are used and manufactured. And they are cylindrical, which is what we'll deal with most in these car fires and battery pack fires. I'll show you the 18650 is the most common cylindrical cell. There's prismatic cells. Those are usually like a square or rectangle, rather thin. You may have those in your hot spots or cameras. They're usually a solid plastic or metal outer casing. And then you have pouch cells. Those are usually the ones that are in your cell phones and laptop computers, the newer laptops, I should say, and iPads, things like that. And then button cells, which everybody's familiar with. Those are the little watch batteries and those types of batteries. So here's a basic diagram that shows you the button cells. There's really not any issue with us for fires with the button cells. The only time we really see anything related to this is when you can have a child. There's been a lot of instances where children get a hold of them and swallow them. And because they're producing electricity, the child can suffer internal burns. So those of you who do EMS, you may want to be aware of that. The next one, B, is a cylindrical cell. And then C, down at the lower left, is a prismatic. And then the lower right is a pouch battery. I'm going to go to another slide to show you how they're actually manufactured. So basically, if you look at the cylindrical cell, we'll start there first. You can see the can, which is the outer layer, and then you have a cathode, then you have a separator, and then you have an anode, and they're rolled up, and they just keep rolling it and rolling it and rolling it. And that is the main 3 solid components, the cathode, separator, and anode of a battery. So you'll see on the prismatic battery it's basically a long thing, and it's kind of like rolled over and folded over, and then that's put in a soft case, or I'm sorry, the hard case. And then the pouch, those are actually just layers. They're actually cut pieces of anode, separator, and cathode laid upon each other on top and then enclosed in a pouch. So what they're doing now is to get more power out of the same size battery is they are making the cathodes, the anodes, and the separators thinner and thinner and thinner. Nan, just real quick, I'm looking at the live version and there you go. Okay, flip back. So what they're doing is to bring up the milliamp hours and the power in the batteries as they're making these thinner, thinner, and thinner, and they're more susceptible to damage. Basically, if you would drop one of these cylindrical cells, as an example, down on the ground and the bottom became bent a little bit, what it does is it crushes the cathode and the anode together and squeezes with the separator, and then you end up with a short circuit. The short circuit creates heat. The heat creates thermal runaway, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Then it creates the fire. So these are actual images. On the left is in the left is prismatic, the center is a pouch, and the right is the 18650, which is the cylindrical cell. This is what they look like. We're going to focus a lot on the 18650 now to talk about how these things are all put together, whether they're in your tools, whether they're in your car, your mobility devices. What they do is they put these 18650s together to form a battery pack. So this is what one might look like in your drill. You know, if you have a drill and you take the plastic case off, this is what you'll see inside. On top, the circuit board is what's called the battery management system. That's an important, crucial part to keeping the batteries stable and safe. This is another example of a little bit larger battery. They'll call it a battery pack or a battery module. This is another larger one. This may be one of many that's in a motor vehicle or a immobile device. You'll see some images of some that are caught on fire and explode later. This is a similar size battery module that is very common. And if you notice real closely, I'm sorry to back up, on the left side of that cutaway, you'll see a little circuit board in there. Again, that's the battery management system. This is what it looks like in an automobile or a motor vehicle. There is a whole bunch of the last types of modules all laid out and interconnected so that they can get the power and the amperage that they need. The voltage and the amperage is unlimited. It all depends on how big they want to build them. So if you look here, we're going to go again to the 18650 cell. The nominal capacity is generally 2,500 milliamps. I've seen them now up to 6,000 milliamp hours. That's why I said they keep making them thinner and thinner so they can get more amps out. The continuous discharge rating is 20 amps. Anybody out there that understands electricity, generally voltage isn't too bad. It's the amperage that will really hurt you. And this amperage is amazing for the small device, how much it can put out. The nominal voltage is 3.6. The high is generally 4.2, and the lower is 2.5. So the battery management systems in these modules, they're very important because they control the depletion and the recharge of the batteries. If you have a very good battery management system, it will ensure that the batteries are depleted evenly and they're recharged evenly. And that allows, that's so you don't end up with strain on one particular battery, and it allows them to have more longevity and lessen the heat. What we're seeing is you can go to YouTube, and I would challenge you to do this later, and Google up how to rejuvenate a dead 18650 or how to rejuvenate a lithium-ion battery. And there are people out there that are actually penetrating these batteries with a screw or a needle to cross the cathode and the anode to rejuvenate it so that it produces a little bit of electricity, and then they'll seal that hole up and then use it again. And there's other batteries that are being recycled on a professional level where they're doing this. And if you take like there's cheap eBay batteries, they call them, you can go, you'll see videos about this, where somebody, they're recycling them, they'll take them, and they have to open them up to get inside, whether to inject some more electrolytes or, recharge or get the battery to the anode and the cathode to reactivate. And then they'll solder over it and then put a new outer shrink wrap on it and make it look like a new battery. And they may sell it at, say, a 3,200 milliamp hour battery, but people that are buying them in these videos, you'll see they're testing them and they're not actually that proper amperage because they've been used and depleted and they're tired. They may only hold 1,000 milliamp hours and they may drain faster. Well, we have these people who think that they know about batteries and they're fixing these battery modules and they're finding the one or two bad batteries and they're replacing them with another battery that's not identical to the ones that are in there. And what's happening is whenever they're going through their charging cycle or their depletion cycle, they are not at the same level as the other batteries, and it's creating problems within that module, which can then cause thermal runaway and ignition. So just another quick note is if you hook them in series, you can increase the voltage. Like my DeWalt 18-volt drill would have 5 of these 18650s in series, and then they would have a couple others, couple of those groups of 5 in parallel to give me more amperage so that I can use that device longer. And they are making energy storage systems now that they're putting in garages, in residential homes, in commercial dwellings. You'll see, or commercial premises, you'll see in one of the later videos, I think it's a 1.25 kilowatt energy storage device that catches fire. That's a huge amount of energy. These are the common lithium-ion battery chemistry makeups. I won't necessarily go through them, but you can see the relevant factor here is what they're used for and what the thermal runaway temperatures are. So as an example, the top one, the cell phones, tablets, laptops, they have a low thermal runaway of 302 degrees Fahrenheit, 150 Celsius. So you will find that people who have, our MDTs fortunately have automatic shutoffs whenever they get hot. Sometimes they're sitting in the windshields of our fire trucks with the sun shining down on them, heating them up, and they shut themselves off so that the batteries don't overheat and go into thermal runaway. But it's very easy for that to happen. You have other ones in your power tools, they have a high temperature rating. The ones for the portable and stationary energy storage, lithium iron phosphate, they're the highest, 518 degrees. But if you look down at the industrial EVs, medical devices, they're down to 300 degrees. The e-bikes, EVs, e-scooters are about 410. So what you have to also realize is you're going to have a lot of these devices that have lithium-ion batteries in your dwelling fires or your commercial premises fire. And what they're going to do is they're going to exacerbate the fire. They may not have been there to cause the fire, but once they have enough heat impingement, they're going to go off on their own. And they're going to form their own chemical reaction and produce not only toxic gases, but very flammable gases. You may even have some explosions caused by these batteries. And just when you thought we were done with the basics about the lithium-ion batteries, when I was surfing Facebook the other night, I found a new dimension of the lithium-ion batteries. We have now lithium-ion batteries that they're selling for replacements for your 9-volt AA, AAA, D, and C batteries. So this is a new breed of battery that's been on the market now and starting to take hold, where you can charge these batteries and not have to keep using alkaline batteries. So anywhere like your remote controls on your TV, they may start having lithium-ion batteries in them. So you've got to look at these little cells as, energy cells, not only for the energy they're providing for the electronics, but potential energy in a fire situation. And of course, Amazon's got them. There they go. You can get a 4-pack, $18.88. They say they can change, that you can charge them 1,000 times. So this is going to be the latest, greatest thing that I'm sure everybody's going to be getting in their stockings for Christmas. So now we're going to move a little bit on to the battery failures and fires. This is a great video from the fire chief organization across the pond over in Europe, but it's a brief I think it's 2 minutes, and it shows you the various types of items that you'll generally be dealing with fire related with lithium-ion batteries.
The purpose of this show reel is to provide some real-life examples of lithium battery fires and illustrate the different ways the fires present in the different devices. First, here are some examples of typical smaller device lithium battery fires which have been featured on YouTube and in the news. Mobile phone fires. A standard mobile phone comes with a built-in safety device which will usually switch it off at about 40 degrees centigrade. But if, for example, the phone was left in the sun on a car dashboard, it will continue to heat up until it catches a light. Mobile phones contain a small lithium battery, typically 60 watt-hours or less. E-cigarettes. These contain a cylindrical cell battery. There is virtually no warning. They almost seem to spontaneously ignite. This can be particularly dangerous when kept in a pocket. Power banks. These devices contain larger size cell batteries, typically 4 times 21/700s, which can charge a phone 3 or 4 times. That amount of stored energy can cause quite a significant fire if the power bank is in a bag or pocket. A lithium battery powering a laptop is usually between 60 and 100 watt-hours and is capable of spraying debris across the office, so is likely to set other areas of the room on fire too. Electric scooter fire. There is more warning with this as smoke is emitted first, but it still erupts into a fire quickly. The lithium battery is in region of 500 to 750 watt-hours. Electric scooters are now banned on TfL network due to fire risk and regular fire incidents which have taken place. E-bikes. These can have up to a kilowatt-hour lithium battery. Just like the e-scooter, the fire starts by emitting smoke first. Using a garden hose to spray the battery with water doesn't make any difference to the fire. It just keeps going. And now for some larger fires involving a recycling centre, a battery energy storage system, BESS, and a couple of electric vehicles. The recycling centre. All lithium battery devices have built-in obsolescence, So once they have been through up to 1,000 cycles of recharging the battery, will need to be replaced. It's worth noting that this is also true for electric vehicles. So the number of batteries and devices which are going through recycling centres is ever increasing. Powder extinguishers are often used on large lithium battery fires in recycling centres, but these are ineffective, so the battery will continue to reignite. 0.7 litres of smoke is generated per battery watt-hour. Therefore, a 6.5 watt-hour battery will generate at least 5 litres of smoke. Next is a video showing testing of the fire hazard of a 125 kilowatt-hour energy storage system comprised of lithium nickel oxide, lithium manganese oxide batteries. The fire smokes for a long time, but once the flames break through, the whole container is destroyed due to propagation of thermal runaway from pack to pack. In China, there was one of these container fires per month last year. Electric vehicle fires can reignite hours, days, or even weeks after being extinguished. So the key question is, when is a fire out? The fire brigade struggled to douse the fire even using 3,000 gallons of water. Fire Chief, making the world a safer place.
So you can see that there are an unlimited amount of devices that may end up causing fires in your districts. But again, we have to look at the fact that they're going to exacerbate other fires. So there's basically, this is a typo. I apologize for this. I added one. There's 4 primary reasons for failure and fire. I amended my presentation last night. The top one is overcharging. That happens whenever the battery management system doesn't function or there's a failure, or more often than not, the wrong charger is used. And I'll give you an example. This is one of the ones that, I always kind of have a disagreement with my wife on. You get an iPhone and you have a small block charger that puts out an amp or 1.2 amps. And then if you get an iPad, it puts out 2.2 amps. It's a larger block, but the plugs all match. So she thinks that that's a speed charger for her iPhone because it charges so much faster. But the problem is it's putting more amperage into that battery than it should, than what that phone was made for. And that's why whenever she picks it up, after she speed charges it, it's warm. Fortunately, iPhones tend to have a pretty good battery management system, but if there's a failure in that system, it's going to go into thermal runaway. And that's where you have overheating is another big problem. Like we talked about previously, of having electronic devices on your dashboard or MDTs in your vehicles, or say you lock it in your cars. For those of you who live in the South and the West, where it really gets hot, that'll cause it to overheat and catch fire as well. And then, of course, there's physical damage. That's another key indicator of what can cause the failures and a fire. And the last but not least is the manufacturing defects. Again, this goes back to whether they're recycled batteries or new batteries, if they're made in a bad plant. There's been some lithium-ion batteries that have been found to have been caused because there was little specks of dust on the separator between the anode and the cathode that deteriorated the separator and then caused it to short out and go into thermal runaway. So, most of the prominent manufacturers, the name brand manufacturers, they take great care in manufacturing those batteries properly and in a very clean environment. But you also have some not so favorable manufacturing processes in some of these other countries, and they're shipping these batteries over and they're going to cause fires. So terms that you'll need to get familiar with as we move into this new, I guess you could say, new century of lithium battery fires is the primary one is thermal runaway. And that's an exothermic reaction that is accelerated by temperature rise. This is usually from heat, whether it be from charging or from depletion or from the chemical reaction inside because of damage. And once the chemical reaction starts, it starts producing its own heat, and it starts producing toxic and flammable gases. Most batteries are made to be able to vent. Those that don't vent, if they heat up too fast, they'll explode. And those that do vent will look like a little blowtorch as they catch fire. Propagate is, the definition of propagate is to spread and promote widely. And what that means in this subject matter is that one battery heats up and causes the batteries next to it to heat up, and then so on and so on. And exacerbate, this is a term that I'm trying to mainstream, and this is my personal opinion, is when we talk about it exacerbating fires that were not caused by lithium batteries, it's make a problem, bad situation, or negative feeling worse, right? So if you have a room and contents on fire and you have an e-bike in the living room and that room heats up to 400 or 500 degrees, you are going to start thermal runaway, and it's going to start to propagate. And then you're going to have that other fuel and fire in that room. And it may even explode, which you'll see in some videos coming up. This particular video is from the Fire Safety Research Institute. It was done with FDNY. They actually built a house, and this is about 2 minutes long. It's showing where they overcharged e-mobility device, which you can see in the bottom left camera. You can see the wheel there. And if you look at the living room high above it, it is against the back wall, furthest image away. The living room low, which is the next block above that, it's behind that couch. And then obviously you can see from the entry where it is, and there's a hallway. And then there's an exterior cam of the window. So if you watch this, lower left, and you'll see off gas as it goes into thermal runaway. There you go. Starting off gas right now. Now it's igniting. There you go. Look how quickly. I mean, granted, it was overcharged for 1 hour and 39 minutes, but once it goes to thermal runaway, there's a very short window before it ignites and or explodes. I have a couple other clips. I'll show you the same video that will focus on some different things coming forward, but just to all see what we're looking at. Okay, you're at flashover now in that room. Not very long. Okay, so what I wanted to do was this next image, I want you to focus on the living room windows, the lower right pane in this video. Ready? Here we go. Do you see the windows blow out? Not only did they blow out in the front, on the alpha side and the delta side, if you look on the rear, towards the rear of that roof, it blew the window on the chimney side of that structure as well. There was that much energy from that explosion. Now, the reality is this may be the cause of the fire. You may have a room in fire, and you may be making entry into that dwelling. And that bike could be go under thermal runaway from the radiant heat from the other fire, and could light off like this as you're entering that building. Things that we need to teach our people about, need to learn about. They need to understand what's going on, and they have to be prepared for it. On this one, this is a shorter clip. I want you to look at primarily the, focus on the top 4 windows. But as you come, you'll see once the fire starts, the entry camera, the top right, really gives you an indication as you start to watch that fire after the rollover happens in the left 2 panes. That camera really gets to show you how far and how quickly that flame banks down to the floor, and you end up with virtually a complete flashover in that room. And I want you to think about this from the time of ignition to the point where the flames are within 12 inches of that floor is 40 seconds. 40 seconds.
Direct flame contact with the battery module.
This is
heat failing the battery.
Self-explanatory. Another one from New York.
Could be coming from, or the heat impact could be coming from a structure fire if the battery wasn't the cause of the fire itself.
I'm going to forward this a little bit so you can see what happens. as the thermal runaway starts to occur.
We also have a very nice view on the Jumbotron as well. Nice up tight from that close-in camera.
There we go. Obviously, on the left side is a thermal imaging camera. You can see the amount of intensity. So when you saw this device look like a torch, the off-gassing of these 18650 cells producing the flammable gas.
Battery.
This is
nickel
another
lead
one.
Battery.
Give you another indication of direct fire impingement. I mean, it's practically like having a firework factory in your home. So later in that, you'll see there's a copy of the video that's a full 50 minutes long. You'll see that they extinguished that fire after all the off-gassing with water. And that's what I would suggest you do. At this point, with the battery fires, if you have a vehicle fire, as an example, in our jurisdiction, we have an interstate that comes through. Well, there's no hydrants on the interstate. And right next to the interstate is what's called 9 Mile Run tributary that runs into the Monongahela River. So, you know, what we're looking at here is if we end up with an EV on fire on the parkway, the highway, we're just going to let it burn. We'll call for a tanker, which will take about 15 to 20 minutes to get here because we're in an urban area and it'll be coming from further out. And we're going to wait until all those explosions and off-gassing occurs and then put the fire out. Because the reality is if we just keep dumping water on it, there's been some car fires. There was one here in North Pennsylvania on I-80. I think they estimated they put 30,000 gallons of water on that fire to get it to extinguish. We're going to talk about some of the hazards here because there's some human hazards and some environmental hazards. And as we move forward, we'll talk about when thermal runaway occurs, the batteries produce not only the flammable gases, but also toxic gases. And these fires generate intense heat and considerable amount of gas and smoke. The primary toxic gas known to be produced is HF, hydrogen fluoride. So hydrogen fluoride here, it's guide 125 in your ERG. And I have some other pictures so it's a little easier to read. It'll go over some of the things, but I want you to consider this. Potential hazards, health, toxic in bold, may be fatal if inhaled, ingested, or absorbed through the skin. Vapors are extremely irritating and corrosive, right? Fire will produce irritating, corrosive, and or toxic gases. And runoff from fire control or dilution water may cause environmental contamination. So like I was telling you, we have an interstate on that highway. All the storm drains go into 9 Mile Run, which is a tributary. And, you know, we'd be killing fish, I think, if we put that in there. So based on this information, that's why we're going to do what we're going to do. There's some other things here for hydrogen fluoride for fire explosion. The vapors from liquefied gas are initially heavier. Some of these materials may react violently with water. You will see videos where lithium in particular acts violently with water, and so does the hydrogen fluoride. It can whenever it's released. Public safety, obviously we want to keep everybody away. We want to stay upwind and uphill and up and or upstream. So many of the gases are heavier than air and may spread along the ground in confined areas. And obviously, we want to ventilate closed spaces. So, you're going in there doing overhaul and structure fires, or you're pulling up to a car fire. I mean, it is 2022, people. We need to be having SCBA on. We need to have the proper PPE. Protective clothing, it says we got to wear positive pressure self-contained breathing apparatus, right? It actually says we should be wearing chemical protective clothing when there's no risk of fire. However, when we're fighting fire, we need to put that protective clothing on, the structural firefighters clothing, but it does not provide protection against the ingestion or absorption of the hydrogen fluoride. So obviously, if you have a large amount, I don't think we need to get into evacuation for a vehicle fire or other fires immediately, unless it's a really, condensed area and it may be going, the gas or the smoke may be going into buildings or nearby, but we want to keep people away from it. We want to keep them away from the smoke plumes. Emergency response, there's stuff, water spray, fog, or regular foam. We're still learning about what we can deal with these lithium-ion batteries. And the evolving tanks really doesn't matter for us. But spill or leak, do not touch or walk through spilled material, right? Stop leak if you can. So that would include your runoff from your water whenever you're putting a fire out, a vehicle fire. You can use water and spray to reduce vapors, and you want to isolate the area until it disappears. But this is another interesting thing on the first aid. I want you to see it says, do not perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation if the victim ingested or inhaled the substance, right? Because that's how toxic it is. You could absorb it into your skin, into your mouth, breathe it in, what have you. So this is some pretty bad stuff, and we need to treat it that way when we're out here dealing with these fires. So I like this quote that, I had the opportunity, like I said, with Deputy Assistant Chief Frank Lee in Florida. He made this statement, and it stuck with me during our presentation. We are basically building the plane while we're flying it, meaning that we are learning about this as we go on. We're all going to have interactions with this, some more than others, and we're going to learn from these, producing information to everybody. And we ask that everybody stay tuned and pay attention to updates as they become available. I think that, speaking with Chief Buckman, we're going to try to do a successive program after this, so that we can talk about various best practices and methods that come out. And you're going to see a lot of other stuff. I got to tell you, since this has been published in the last week, I got 4 different emails unsolicited from various manufacturers about how their product puts out lithium-ion batteries. I got a fire stopper, a fire ice, F500 cell blocks, and you're going to have all these people coming out. I would caution you. I'm not saying that they don't work. I'm not saying they do work. I'm not here to sell products, but use your due diligence, because everybody always has the next best product to take care of every remedy. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. And they're very expensive, a lot of these products. So be careful and be cautious and don't run out. Water still works. You just have to manage the incident scene and use the water effectively. And with that, I think that I made it to 48 minutes, John. So if there's any questions, I could try to answer them now. John, I think you're muted. There you go.
There we go. All right. It's amazing what we don't know in this world as things keep being manufactured. You also brought up a lot of new terms here that I would encourage all of our attendees to go and look up the meaning of these terms. Thermal runaway, anthodes and cathodes. I know those have been around for a while. You asked the question, when is the fire really out? And looking at some of the comments that were made during the presentation, that's a big question. And, it is about how do you decide when a fire is out. So very good stuff. We thank our friends at FDNY, Chief Lee, for helping us with this information, for them getting out stuff, their information, their experiences. I did note, Clyde, your comment about They're making now these smaller batteries. You're going to be carrying these lithium batteries in your pocket, which again, as you said, if you drop them, you could damage them, and you have no idea when they might decide to overheat. Because I do know that my iPad does get muted, or it does get overheated a lot of times when I leave it on the dashboard. And now I'm thinking, yeah, someday I'm going to come back and my car will be on fire because I left that on the dashboard. So, Clyde, thank you very much for putting this together, and the attendees. I don't see any questions.
Yeah, I see there's some popping up right now.
Okay, all right.
I can see them actually on the, there's question from Nicholas D. If the vehicle involved is blocking the main roadway causing congestion, we will have to wait to move and extinguish that vehicle, question mark. You know, that's going to be a judgment call on your end. And again, we don't know enough about the damage from the water running away into your source system and storm management. We don't know that, if you have water readily available, if a vehicle's on fire, you are going to use tens of thousands of gallons to extinguish that fire if the batteries are in thermal runaway. So you have to weigh that out on a case-by-case basis. That's what we're trying to say. We're still building the plane. We're going to learn from other people's experiences. I had a question from somebody the other day that if you pull up and there's an EV on fire in the garage, what do you do? I might consider trying to put a water spray on that vehicle and try to hook it up to a winch and pull it out of the building. And you might be able to limit the damage to the building, but you have to be able to do it safely. So there's going to be all kinds of situations that we're going to encounter that we're going to be flying by the seat of our pants because we can't possibly come up with an SOG for everything.
As you said, we're learning as we're going. One of the questions I saw on the question is foam and a good alternative to try to suppress the fires in these electric batteries?
From what I understand and the research that I have done, the initial indications are they are not, because the only thing that will stop the thermal runaway is cooling the batteries, reducing the temperature. So if you have a few cells off and you're able to cool the rest of the adjacent cells, you can stop the combustion. But the problem is these packs are ruggedized and they're enclosed, and you usually can't get into them to do so. So this is another catch-22 that we're dealing with. Foam generally does not cool it off. It takes away oxygen, but the chemical reaction in the thermal runaway, it creates its own oxygen in that process. So it could still burn under the foam, in essence.
I did note, again, one of the comments in the chat section about making sure your firefighters, maybe they change their strategy or their tactical application of water now on fires where they might have a lithium battery, and that is stay a farther distance away because of the explosion hazard. That may be something that every incident commander has to think about.
Yeah, and I think that, I think you need an indication that there is a potential lithium-ion battery fire and explosion about to occur, because you can't use that as an excuse not to go in and do our jobs at the same time. So that's another thing that we have to balance out in the scales with our situational awareness.
Yeah. All right, I'm scrolling up and down here. Got a compliment on your and Chief Leib's presentation at Symposium. Great information from John H. John H., we appreciate that. Thank you. Contamination. Clyde, what's the risk for firefighters on contamination? I know you talked about gases and as they're still burning, but what about after you think the fire's out?
Well, again, after you think the fire's out, we know from all other fires that there continues to be off-gassing. What I can tell you that it's definitely known that the smoke and gases during combustion definitely contain the hydrogen fluoride, which is the worst component of those gases identified thus far. That's a corrosive material. So if we add water to it, the corrosive material, the water becomes corrosive. So if you get that on your gear, you need to get that back and wash your gear according to the manufacturer's instructions as quickly as you can, and inspect your gear after use. If it's corrosive, and you'll be able to start to see damage to your gear because it'll eat through the gear if there's enough corrosive material on it. But this is another thing that we're going to be dealing with for sure.
We got a suggestion here, and again, we'll just give you this as information for you to just do your own research and decide. that suggestion that maybe ERG guide number 138 is more appropriate than the one for hydrogen fluoride and hydrous. Again, we're giving you information to go research and make a decision based upon that information. We're not telling you one is better than the other, but like with all decisions on the fire ground, they're hardly ever black and white, and you always got some gray there.
Correct. And just so there's clarification, the guide 124 is what was referenced under hydrogen fluoride. I'd gladly research that and see what the 138's from.
Yeah. What about putting dry ice on the non-burning cell to stop thermal runaway?
That may be something that we should suggest to FDNY or FSRI to try. I haven't seen anything where that's been studied to be able to use as an effective tool.
Okay. All right. Well, on your screen, you probably see a couple QR codes there that you can, again, get some more information. You will get a link to the recorded session along with a brief survey by email. We would like to know, what else you would like to know about this issue. As Clyde said, the VCOS is willing to do more webinars as long as we're providing you with information that is relevant to your job and helping you and your firefighters do it safer. So we encourage you to go after these, use the QR codes to get this information and get the additional information, and then share the recorded session here with us. And then you can email Clyde directly or email me directly if you have suggestions on other webinars related to lithium-ion batteries or just webinars in general. The VCOS is restarting our webinar education program. Our Nan Phillips, who's our webinar coordinator, who's on here managing this webinar, probably going to overwork her a little bit because we've got lots of interest. This one shows lots of interest. We had 44 people on yesterday. I think we have a webinar next week, has 110 people registered. So we see that there's a need out there. So the VCOS is glad to try to get different topics with different instructors to share with our members. And so we appreciate all of you coming on. I know we do, I don't know, Nan, if you're going to get up the coming events, some of the other webinars that are scheduled, just real quick. There on the left, there's the VCOS webinars that we got scheduled. And popcorn persistence, I would encourage you to attend that one. You're probably going, what in the world is that one about? Attend it. It's a longtime friend of mine who's going to take you down the Orville Redenbacher popcorn process. And as it relates to leadership and management, I think you'll have a good time on that one. And the 10 Commands of Leadership next week with Chief Barron will be good. I've heard his presentation before. So again, I think you're hopefully will get an opportunity to attend some of these. Over on the right, you see some of the in-person seminars that the IFC sponsors. We encourage you to go to the Symposium in the Sun, or if you've heard about our recently concluded Symposium in the Dark, whereas we're introducing the keynote speaker, the power failed because we're experiencing a hurricane. But we got the power back on in about an hour and a half.
Thanks to lithium-ion batteries.
Pardon?
Thanks to lithium-ion batteries, we were able to continue that program.
Yep. So Fire Rescue International, again, is good every year. This will be our 150th anniversary. So this one will be a little more special. But we encourage you to be involved with the IFC. If you're not a member, we encourage you to join. But even if you're not a member, you can still come to these events and participate. You can come to the webinars, whether you're a member or not. So we appreciate everybody coming on. I'm looking here. Any other questions? Feedback upon tested, proven extinguished a runaway fire. Somebody's looking for some test results on runaway fires as it relates to multi-class extinguishers that interrupt the oxidative pyrolysis. Another new word there, oxidative. This is going to challenge us for a little while before we get our hands around it. But we appreciate everybody coming on today. We thank you all very much again. And we're going to sign off here and wish you all a pleasant day and be safe out there. Thank you.
Thank you.